What's going on, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the BZ Sports Podcast. My name is B. Brian Drew, of course, main host of the BET Sports Podcast. I thought Fogger was here, but no, it's just me tonight. Just wanted to wish you guys hope you guys having a great Tuesday night. Tomorrow I'll be with Fog for our show, Two Man Front, so be sure to watch us on that as well. But today it's just going to be me. We're going to be talking about the talk of the town, the hottest topic right now in all of college football. I won't say sports, but all of college football right now. Did the committee get it right? But before we jump into this very, very hot, controversial topic, especially for you Knowles fans like myself, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Use this QR code to subscribe. Go ahead and take your phone. Use the QR code to subscribe. I'll put it back up in a minute onto the corner, this side in the corner, while so you guys can subscribe to the YouTube channel because we're playing on YouTube Live right now. We're playing on Facebook on the BZ Sports. We're playing on a myriad of channels right now. So wherever you get your sports, probably on there right now as well. And of course, please don't forget, leave your comments below. Leave those comments below, man. I love chatting with you guys. And I think this is going to be a very, very chatty topic because people have been talking about it all pretty much since Saturday or since Sunday, since the selection Sunday of the college football playoff came out. And I'm going to really, really enjoy this topic because I'm kind of conflicted. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm kind of conflicted because mainly because I'm an FSU fan, right? So we'll jump right into that. But go ahead, please scan and subscribe. Let me go ahead and put that banner up in the corner real quick so you guys can do that while we chat in a minute. And I'll do that in just a minute while that loads up. But go ahead, use your QR code, subscribe right here, pause the video, do what you got to do. Really, really appreciate the follow on Facebook. Really appreciate the follow on YouTube as well. So go ahead and do that. So let's dive right in, man. Let's dive right into the topic. The question is, did FSU really get robbed? All right, so let's just kind of backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about what happened before we move forward, right? Because obviously we got to give you a little backstory, right? So FSU, well, here's the original rankings, by the way. Here are the rankings. Here's what the committee decided. Michigan number 1, Washington number 2, Alabama number 3, or actually Texas number 3, and Alabama number 4. Obviously, you can see there's no FSU. FSU finished 13-0 in the ACC, 13-0, won the ACC championship, Power 5 undefeated champion for the first time in the 4-team playoff history that a Power 5 undefeated conference champion did not get in. Now, that is unprecedented, which is understandably, very, very understandably surprising for a lot of people, especially Knowles fans, because obviously Florida State, figured they would be in because they did everything they can do, right? However, obviously the backstory is this: Florida State losing their then Heisman Trophy candidate. And honestly, in my opinion, he's still a Heisman Trophy candidate, in my opinion. But losing Jordan Travis was a big deal, obviously, right? Losing Jordan Travis was obviously in the eyes of the voters, pretty big deal in terms of losing Jordan Travis. Then Florida State goes and plays Florida. They have a guy named by the name of Tate Rodemaker, the backup quarterback. Did not look great against Florida, but the Noles pulled it out. But they offensively did not look great for the first time all year, finishing under 300 yards. It was under 300 yards of total offense in that game, Florida State. But Florida State did pull out the victory against the arch rival of Florida, right? Florida State wins that game. They move on to the ACC title game. Oh, wait. Tate Rodemaker gets hurt. And in comes freshman Brock Glenn, who's supposed to be pretty good, but he's a freshman, right? So you can't expect much from him, right? You can't expect much from the guy, right? So in comes Brock Glenn against Louisville. They go play in the ACC title game down there in Charlotte. And what happens? Florida State does win. However, very unimpressingly, Brock Glenn was not good at all. The offense of Florida State stud. They pretty much were at the very least, I don't know if they were even average, but they just sputtered all game. Did a lot of wildcat. I must say, did a lot of wildcats, which we'll get to, which I will explain to you why that is so significant because of the outcome of that game, right? You know, of that Florida State Louisville game. Did not favor Florida State, even though they won, because I believe of that wildcat, and I'll explain that in a minute. But nevertheless, FSU wins that game. FSU won the game, and they're undefeated ACC champions. Now, before that game, though, right, a few hours later, Alabama played, and I believe Texas played at noon. Texas destroys Oklahoma State. You know, they pretty much stamped their time after Friday. Washington beat Oregon. Noon, Texas beats Oklahoma State, destroys them, and then of course, Alabama defeats number 1 ranked Georgia, ending their 29 rank winning streak. Now, here's where the fun begins. Okay. The question is, did FSU really get robbed? As you can see, the committee decided to go with Alabama. Alabama jumped from 8-4. Texas jumped from 7-3. And for the first time in history of the conference or history of the playoffs, no team has jumped more from 7 or 8. No team had a large jump from 6, right? Before or after 6. So Texas and Oklahoma made some history. Texas and Alabama made some history doing this. Now, the controversy was should Alabama have gotten in over FSU? You know, one thing that's interesting about this conversation is this. Before Jordan Travis even went down, there were people screaming there were people who were literally screaming that FSU did not deserve to be in the playoff because of their soft schedule and because of their playing in the ACC, right? Even before Jordan Travis went down, right? People were saying that about FSU. Now, fast forward to North Alabama, Jordan Travis goes down. They bring in Tate Rodemaker, and they win that game. But FSU was a completely different football team without this guy. A completely different team, right? If you watched Florida State from LSU to the first quarter of North Alabama, you would see that FSU was a completely different team from the second quarter of North Alabama and on, right? With Tate Rodemaker and Brock Glenn. But even before that, people were still questioning whether FSU should have been in. Still questioning them. So I just don't understand the outrage of now all of a sudden FSU does what they're supposed to do, right? FSU does what they're supposed to do, and now people are saying, "Oh, FSU got robbed," even though before Travis went down, Jordan Travis went down, people were still saying FSU was overrated, right? Like that's one of my biggest things. I didn't really understand. I don't understand where this outrage is coming from FSU when before that people were saying that they weren't worthy of a top 5 spot because FSU played in a pretty soft conference in the ACC, right? You know, I believe the committee did get it right because, look, player availability is important, right? It matters, and everybody saw that it mattered, right? When Jordan Travis went down, FSU was not the same football team. They just weren't. I mean, defensively, they were great. They have a playoff caliber defense. They were fantastic. They played lights out. They're the reason why they beat Louisville. It was not the offense, it was the FSU defense. I do believe that. However, that offense just wasn't good. Here's the thing. Going back to the Wildcat, right? I'm an FSU fan, as many of you know. I'm a Florida State fan. I love them, right? I've been a Florida State fan my whole life. So I think I watched every game except one this year. I just couldn't, right? Every game except one, right? FSU ran the Wildcat while Jordan Travis was the quarterback 3 times all year. 3 times. And it was garbage time. 3 times FSU ran the Wildcat, right? They ran the Wildcat 8 times. Like 10 times over the last 2 weeks, 8 times, which tells you everything you need to know about how different the team was, right, without Jordan Travis. And the committee knew this. They were just a dramatically different team. you could even make the argument that if FSU I'm glad this didn't happen, but if Jordan Travis was to get injured earlier in the season, FSU wouldn't be in this conversation, right? It wouldn't be in this conversation. Now, it just shows you how valuable Jordan Travis is to that team, how good he is. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's really, really good. I think he's have a chance in the NFL to be very successful. But I don't think that I personally don't think that the team was anything it was before Jordan Travis went down. Let me get some comments real quick. How many NFL teams have won a Super Bowl with the backup quarterbacks? At least 6. I don't understand what that has to do with anything. Like I said, whoever this is, like I said, Florida State was a different football team before Jordan Travis. Like Florida State, here's what I'm convinced of. Florida State wouldn't be able to beat Michigan. Florida State's not beating Texas. Florida State's not beating Washington. I don't even know if Florida State would even beat Oregon, right? But as is, I really feel like the committee took that into consideration. The committee watched these games and they realized how different a football team Florida State was. And the outrage, I call it fake for a couple reasons. One, I think people know deep down inside if this Florida State team went to the playoffs, they would have got the doors blown off of them because of what we saw against Florida in Louisville. Like with those two teams who are Florida, which is a 5-7 team, Louisville, which is a pretty good team, but not as good a caliber team as Florida State, right? Because they lost to Kentucky. So Louisville is not that great of a team, but just how different Florida State looked against Louisville. I think the committee and a lot of people know that you put Florida State in this playoff, it's going to be a blowout, most likely. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but man, again, I watched every Florida State game. This offense was so bad. It was so bad. like it just didn't work without Jordan Travis. And those two quarterbacks who came in after him just weren't good enough to move the football, which is why they went to Wildcat, right? Which is exactly why they went to Wildcat. So I just don't buy the outrage, especially because the same people who were saying that Florida State was a soft team because of their schedule with Jordan Travis, right, are now outraged that Florida State is undefeated and didn't get in with two different quarterbacks who aren't Jordan Travis. Like, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, man. So like that's just, I think the committee got it right. It's weird because I'm going against my team, but I have to be real. But Lord, you know what? Like, what about, and this, oh, by the way, this for some of you who didn't see it, this was my final 2-4. This would have been my top 4 picks. Right? If I was choosing right here. So I would have had Michigan number 1. I would have had Washington number 2. And I would have had Alabama, who beat Georgia, at number 3. And I would have kept Georgia in there. Because I think the real tragedy of this is how does Georgia not able to defend, the 2-time national champions, not able to defend their own title? For me, that's the bigger tragedy or travesty, whatever words you want to use. Like that, to me, that's the bigger one, because I really feel like Georgia did everything they needed to do to get to where they were, but they did lose. I acknowledge that they did lose, but they lost to a conference rival in the SEC championship against the number 8 team in the country by 3 points. That's their only loss. Their only loss in the last year. And it's only their second loss in the last 2 years, right? And it snapped the 29-game win streak. And they're not able to be in the playoffs to defend their national championship. I feel like that's more of a travesty than anything. That's why, if you go back, that's why I had them in number 4, because I felt like they deserved it. I felt like they deserved to be in the playoffs. Between all these teams in here, I would say Michigan and Georgia have been the most complete and most, I would say, consistent. All these teams had a close victory. So like the whole idea that Georgia almost lost or kept it close against Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech, and Alabama needed a last-second throw against Auburn, right? Even Florida State, right, with Jordan Travis, needed a miracle against Boston College, right? That was a close game, right? So I mean, all of these teams, Michigan, I don't recall them having a nail biter, which is why I feel like they've been the most consistent. Say what you want about the conference, but Michigan's definitely done what they've had to do. So I feel like they are the number one team in the country, and I feel like they're the most consistent team. Washington's had some nail biters, but Penix Jr. has been great. We'll get to him in a minute when we talk about Heisman. He's been really, really, really good, right? And he beat Oregon twice, so I think Washington definitely deserves to be number 2. I feel like Alabama, the way they've been playing since they lost to Texas, I understand they lost to Texas. I really get that. But the way they have been playing up until that Auburn game, really, and they had some pretty close games, but nothing really that was very worrisome until they got to Auburn. But that's an arch rival, and I believe it was in Jordan-Hare. I believe it was in Auburn, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that's a rivalry game. So all these teams had close games. I wasn't really tripping about any of that. People want to say other stuff, but to me, Georgia and Michigan have been the most complete teams out of these 4 all year. So I really felt like Georgia should have had a shot to at least defend their crown, their 2-time defending crown as 2-time defending national champions. To me, this is the bigger story. I feel like Georgia should have more of a gripe about this, but unfortunately, you can only let so many people in the playoffs. This 4-team playoff, I'm really, really, really happy this is the last year. I really am. I'm pretty much sick of the 4-team playoff. I'm really, really excited. We're going to 12 teams. I really felt like there were 8 to 12 teams that could have won the national championship, or at least competed for it. At least 8. At the max, there was 8, right? 12, probably not realistically, but I do believe that there were at least 8 teams. And I really believe Georgia, it's more of a travesty that they were not in. Like, for me, over Florida State, because Georgia is a better football team than Florida State. I don't know if they're going to win because I don't know who's playing, transfer portal, all the other stuff. But I do know if you lined up Georgia and you lined up Florida State on the same field as they are right now, you can't convince me that Florida State is going to beat Georgia. Same thing with Alabama. If you line up Alabama and you line up Florida State on the same field, you can't convince me that they are going to, you can't convince me that Florida State's going to beat Bama. You can't convince me Florida State's going to beat Bama, Georgia, Michigan, or Washington, or Texas, as Florida State is right now. So, but that's just my opinion. Obviously, we don't really know, right? I understand everything. This is why you play the games. I understand that. But if we're being honest, if you saw Florida State these last 2 games, come on, man. They're not one of the best 4 teams in college football right now. FSU is not one of the 4 best teams in college football right now, right? I think the committee got it half right. I would have put Georgia over Texas. In my opinion, I will let Georgia defend their crown, but Texas is a worthy opponent as well. So that's just my 2 cents on this whole matter. So next year we should not have this type of debate about who's in, because we'll have 12 teams. And everybody who's supposed to be, all the Power 5 teams are going to get in, and then some at larges, maybe even some Group 5 teams as well. All right, let's move on, though. Let's move on real quick to Heisman talk. The Heisman candidates have been revealed. I was a little shocked at one, and that shock it was Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I feel like Marvin Harrison Jr. got the nod out of almost out of, I don't know what you call it, respect, or just because he's clearly one of the best wide receiver prospects that's going to come out of college football in a long time. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to get to the league, and he's going to have a Jamar Chase type of impact. He's going to automatically be a top 5 receiver wherever he goes. I really do. He's that good of a wide receiver. He's good, man. He is good. But here are the candidates. Got Jane Daniels of LSU, Marvin Harrison Jr. of Ohio State, Bo Nix of Oregon, and of course, Michael Penix Jr. of Washington. And we're just going to go over, give you a little bit of give you some background and some stat background of all these guys and see how they compare. And I'm going to give you who I think is going to win the Heisman at the very end. Michael Penix Jr. Here are his numbers. Not bad. He started off really hot, but then he kind of tailed off a little bit there. 33 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 66 completion percentage, 161 passer rating. Biggest games, he beat Oregon twice. That's impressive. He beat Oregon, I believe. Well, he beat Oregon in Seattle, and then he beat Oregon on a neutral site. So that's pretty big right there. 2 big games. He beat them twice, and of course, Oregon State. That was a big game as well. And of course, the Apple Cup. I can't forget about that. He won that game, which on the last second field goal. So Michael Penix Jr. has been pretty clutch. This is actually his 6th year. And by the way, all these quarterbacks, by the way, coincidentally, are transfers. So just thought that was interesting. But Michael Penix Jr., there's his numbers right there. And let's go to the next guy. Bo Nix, Oregon. Bo Nix, incredible numbers. I mean, the 40 to 3 touchdown interception ratio is incredible. He added 6 more rushing touchdowns, which gives him a total of 46. The 77.2 completion percentage. At one point, it was 79, but it kind of went down a little bit because of this past game. The voters don't vote. I don't know when they vote, but I do know they vote after the conference games. So it kind of makes me wonder. Bo didn't have the greatest game. I don't think he even threw a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. Not the greatest game to leave the voters to remember, right, before they cast in their vote. But he had a great year. Bo had a great year, man. I mean, Auburn transfer. Spent 1 or 2 years at Auburn. Really, really struggled. Comes to Oregon. Last year he had a pretty good year. This year he's having a Heisman year. Huge games against USC, Oregon State, and Utah. Yeah, I think it's Bo. It's the lasting impression, man. It's the lasting impression that I'm worried about with Bo, but the numbers are phenomenal. The numbers are great. The numbers are absolutely phenomenal. So, I think he was the front runner, but I'm not super confident anymore. Go to the next guy real quick. Jaden Daniels of LSU, Arizona State transfer. Jaden Daniels had almost 4,000 yards passing, 3,800 yards, 40 to 4 touchdown to interception ratio, which is incredible. 73% completion percentage, 208 passer rating, and he added on 1,134 yards with 10 touchdowns. Now, honestly, before the Pac-12 title game, if you would have told me that Jaden Daniels was going to win the Heisman, I would have said no, because of he lost 3 games. They lost 3 games, and he didn't finish a game against Alabama, but I still put it down as one of his biggest games because he played great until he went down. But I feel like Bo Nix's performance helped Jaden Daniels, excuse me. I really do. I feel like his performance helped a little bit. And I do believe that he has a shot now, even with 3 losses. I don't think they're going to a New Year's Six bowl. I think Jaden Daniels has a really good shot. I felt like the losses that they had, he didn't start off super hot, but he obviously ended off pretty hot. And the 50 total touchdowns with only 4 turnovers, at least interceptions, is very impressive. Very impressive with over almost what is that? Around 42, almost 5,000 yards of total offense. Yeah, I mean that's impressive. And then lastly, Marvin Harrison Jr., the presumed number 1 overall pick in a lot of eyes. Definitely the best wide receiver prospect out there. A lot of people think it's Neighbors of LSU. I believe it's Michael Neighbors. I believe Michael. I forget. But I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. over Neighbors, but Neighbors is very, very good. LSU looking like LSU and Ohio State just pump out receivers apparently. But Marvin Harrison Jr. has been great all year. He's been fantastic all year. I mean, I know his numbers really don't show it. I mean, the numbers are pretty somewhat kind of average if you're looking as it pertains to Heisman. But he was just the best guy on the field. I mean, the quarterback situation obviously there wasn't great. I mean, average at best with Kyle McCord, who just entered the transfer portal. But Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he had a stretch like in November where he had over 150 yards, 3 or 4 games straight, and he was just phenomenal. I can't wait to see this guy at the next level. I mean, he's clearly going to pick off where his dad left off when his dad was in Indianapolis. But his biggest games here, Maryland had a great game, Penn State, Michigan State, and then in Michigan he had a great game, amazing game against the guys up north. So yeah, those are that. I think he's not going to win it. I think he's going to get the least amount of votes because of his numbers. But out of these guys, he's going to be the best NFL prospect, no question about it. 5 years from now, we could talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. being the best receiver in the NFL, maybe even 2 to 3. Honestly, he's phenomenal. So who do I think is going to win? Jayden Daniels, man. Jayden Daniels, I do. You know what? I'm going to give Sean Mettello. I'm probably say this last name wrong, and I apologize. He's from 3-Man Weave. Sean Mettello has been trying to convince me and everybody else that Jayden Daniels is the Heisman candidate. But looking at his numbers, and then I really felt like Bo Nix was the guy, right? But Bo Nix did not have the greatest game and the biggest game of the year. I think that goes a long way. I don't think Penix Jr., I feel like his numbers aren't the best out of these guys. He did get his team to the playoffs, but I just feel like his numbers aren't as good as the other guys, other quarterbacks like a Bo Nix, who has a great completion percentage, TD to interception ratio. But I think the rushing yards for Jayden Daniels, the former Arizona State Sun Devil, coming over east to LSU and doing this. And if LSU had any type of defense, we could be talking about them in the playoffs, honestly, or at least in the SEC title game that Alabama just won. So I'm gonna go with Jayden Daniels. I am. I'm gonna go with Jayden Daniels. I think Jayden Daniels is gonna be the guy. I do. But if it's not, then it's probably gonna be Bo Nix. I think it's between those two. I really do. I think it's between those two. But that's gonna do it for me, man. I really appreciate you guys for joining the show on this Tuesday night, and this cold Tuesday night, wherever you are, especially kind of cold out here in the Bay. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm gonna try to do this every Tuesday to talk about the hottest news in college football. Definitely gonna start doing some top 5 positions when it comes to the NFL draft. That's coming along. Obviously, we are really rolling into draft season, especially as we roll the calendar over to 2024. Transfer portal news, things, a lot of movement in the NFL, in the NCAA right now. So in college football, so it's been a lot of fun. Playoffs should be a lot of fun. Can't wait for that for New Year's Day or the 29th. I don't recall, but can't wait for the playoffs. But like I said before, please do not forget to subscribe. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to go ahead and put the QR code back on the screen so you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for all your support on the Be Easy podcast as well. To really appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys engaging in the page as well. Go ahead. There's the QR code right there. And I really appreciate you guys for joining today. Go ahead and subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. And don't forget to watch me and Fog tomorrow for the 2-Man front. We'll be here talking about the hottest news in the NFL and a little bit of college football as well. Tomorrow, here, same place, same time, 9 o'clock. See you there, and I'm out.